Okay, and we're live. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis Phinney Foundation for Parkinson's. And each week I get together with people with Parkinson's, Parkinson's care partners, and others who are affected by Parkinson's to talk about their life, their work, all the ways that they live well, maybe sometimes the ways they don't live well with Parkinson's. If you like these conversations, I'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. You can also visit us at dpf.org to get a bunch of free resources to help you or those that you love live better with Parkinson's. Today, I am here with Kristi LaMonica. How you doing, Kristi?
Hi, Mel.
It's
Nice
great
to
to
see
see you.
everybody.
Super glad that you're here today. And I just want to have a really great conversation. We met because our mutual friend and colleague, Kat Hill, hooked us up. And you're part of a couple of different panels with Kat, I believe, or a group,
Yes.
working group. So we can talk about that for sure. And then we bonded about dogs because that's the whole thing is the dogs. And I don't have mine with me right now. Do you have yours?
Yeah, I have one. She's on the floor behind me in her bed.
Hi, buddy. Hopefully she'll make an appearance. Do you have healers too?
I have border collies.
Border collies. Okay.
I have two border collies. So they're both rescues. Lulu, who is behind me on the floor in her bed, she is actually from the streets of Denver. My husband found her in an alley when we were in Denver for my postdoc.
Wait,
And
you happened to see her in the alley?
my husband did.
Oh my gosh.
So he brought her home. Our golden retriever fell in love with her, and he called. I told him, you need to call animal control. And somehow we ended up with a puppy.
Oh my gosh.
And then we foster failed another border collie from New England Border Collie Rescue.
Okay, so you have two border collies and a golden.
No, the golden passed away. So just two border collies and a street cat.
Okay, great. And wait, your cat's got a fun. What's your cat's name again?
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
She's missing a left ear.
Okay. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. So I have two. They're mutts, whatever, right? The rescues, they're whatever. But we did the DNA stuff for fun, and they're both healers. One of them is a healer, and he's definitely looks like a red healer, and he's about the size of a red healer, but he's actually 33% Chihuahua, which is crazy.
That's so funny.
It is crazy. He's got like a queer, really crazy little protection thing. Like Chihuahuas like will bark, and like they're really protective of their person. He's like that. But otherwise he's a healer. And then our other one is like a healer lab mix. So real dopey guy, but super sweet.
She just love to hurt everyone everywhere. So
yeah. All the nipping and the ankles, right?
They just kind of try to get you to go where they want you to go. There's no nipping. They're good at it. They're really good at getting you to go.
Yeah. Okay, so we met through Kat, and then you joined our Living with Parkinson's meetup, which is something that we do every month. We do it the third Thursday of every month.
Yeah.
And it's just a panel of we're growing. I think we have about 7 or 8 or 8 or 9 actually when it's a full panel. And we talk about all the different things that people with Parkinson's do. We kind of started out as a YOPD panel, and we're going to talk a lot about that because you were definitely diagnosed YOPD. And but it was YOPD, and everyone on the panel was diagnosed as YOPD, which once YOPD, always YOPD.
Right.
But we have a really big range of ages. We have somebody 30s and then all the way to 70s. So it's a big range. I would love to hear a little bit about just your experience with your diagnosis. I know that you have your sort of clinical diagnosis date, but you had a lot of experience before that, feeling like something's not quite right. And when you can look back, you can say, oh, I think I had this then.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
So there's really like a few diagnosis dates that stick out in my head. So there's the diagnosis date that I got from my ortho then the movement disorder specialist. And if you go back even further, when I knew from teaching, so as a biology professor, I teach a class called Seminar in Biology, and students present literature on lots of different topics. And since we talk a lot about stem cells and how stem cells can possibly be a therapeutic for neurodegenerative disorders, I had a student presenting one day on Parkinson's, and he was showing a video on a patient. And I looked down at what the patient was looking at their hand, and it was tremoring. And I looked down at my hand, and I'm like, oh, hey, my fingers are kind of doing the same thing. And so for a bit of time, I just kind of pushed those symptoms aside. So my fingers were tremoring on my left hand. It was not very fun at all to type in meetings. So I was co-chair of a committee for our general education program, and we're redesigning it. So we'd have a lot of meetings, and we'd have to be on screen in person and type stuff. And I hated being the person to type because I was always typing something wrong because my finger would start trembling. And I just always had my hand clenched. I had a really good poker face, and my toes were clenched a lot. So I wore out the inside of my shoes for years. And it just really, I just kept on putting those symptoms aside. And then I think that it really became more apparent when I was doing CrossFit. Okay. So I was doing some front squats. So when you have the barbell on your chest, and if I get over a certain weight, I would have issues with vagal syncope. So I would just drop the bar and almost pass out. And then when I would do back squats, so the barbell on my back, my fingers would start twitching. And I just can never, my left leg would never keep up with my right leg. So if I do things like jump up on a box, chances of me making it all the time were not very good.
Because like, I mean, I'm a CrossFit person. So would your right leg go, but your left leg wouldn't come with it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes. My gosh.
So there's permanent marks on my shin from everywhere where I kind of scrape my shin.
Got the CrossFit shin. We've got them, right?
Yeah, except for mine's really in the same exact spot. So
on the left.
Yep.
Oh.
And double unders, for folks who don't know, where you get the jump rope to go under your feet twice. I just never do double unders. There's no reason why I couldn't do them, except my left hand wouldn't go fast enough.
Oh my gosh.
So my left hand, my whole left side just wasn't going fast enough to do most things right. So I knew that there was something wrong through all that. And I think that even quite a few times I said to someone that I was working out with, hey, I think that, I think I have Parkinson's. I think there's something really wrong with me. And so I just kind of put that aside, and I had some hip issues. So doing burpees, my hips really started to hurt on my left side a lot. And then my elbow was kind of frozen, and it wasn't right. So I went to a PT to try to see what was going on. And I ended up going to eventually an ortho, because that didn't seem to be helping. And the ortho, we dealt with my hip first, and they said that, oh, you should get surgery because you have a torn labrum and you have an impingement. So I got the surgery, and then after that, nothing seemed to be right.
Oh my gosh, that must have been so frustrating.
So it was really frustrating when I was going to rechecks with the hip surgeon, and he was saying, relax your muscles. And I'm like, I am relaxing them. This is as relaxed as they get. No, they're not. No, they're not. You need to relax them more. I'm like, but I can't. Like, what? Why are you not listening to me?
Oh my gosh.
There was definitely signs at that point in time that were really, really clear. And this was like 2019. That were just really clear, but nobody was watching me walk, or nobody was doing anything. It just didn't seem like all my healthcare team, they weren't on board. They weren't on the same bus. So they just weren't getting the same message.
Did it just seem like, no, they've just kind of got in their head that this is an orthopedic issue?
Yes.
Yeah. And they just didn't even look elsewhere. They were just like, clearly I see this, so this must be
Right.
this.
Yes. Right. So in my elbow, I went to go see someone for an EMG, and that guy was like, well, it shouldn't be anything major because you have no family history and you're too young. So that just goes to young onset, doesn't it? And then finally, fast forward to next year in March, the ortho goes, well, I think that you have young onset Parkinson's.
The
Or I think,
orthopedic said this?
yeah, he said, I think you have Parkinson's. Go see the folks at Albany Med and they'll fix you up. And that was
They'll
it.
sew you right back up.
Yeah, that was it. So here I am, 40, being sent off by the orthopedic, being told I have Parkinson's, or that he thinks I have Parkinson's because I have all the symptoms that are exhibited, all the symptoms I was exhibiting were indicative of that. I knew it in my head, but hearing it out loud from someone else was just kind of a, what do I even do with this?
Yeah.
And then
You're like, it's okay if I say it.
Right, in my brain. Yeah. When you're saying it out loud, it makes it more real. And so I went through the trying to get everyone on board to get my appointment with the movement specialist, and that took a number of rounds of paperwork and everything. And then when I talked to them to make
can we go? I just want to talk a little bit about that because I do think this is something that, you know, people curious or interested in this, like what actually happened? Why was it so hard for you to see somebody? What did you actually finally do to be able to get in to see a movement disorder specialist or even a neurologist? Like what happened?
So first, paperwork. Following up with the paperwork was critical. So I had to keep on calling to make sure my paperwork was sent over. So to get into a movement specialist, typically I'm assuming that you need to have a referral, even though my insurance doesn't require a referral, but I don't think they'll just take anyone. So you need to be referred from somewhere, but my paperwork wasn't going through. So I couldn't make the appointment until I had that paperwork squared off. So I had to keep on following up on that. And then when I actually got my paperwork through to make an appointment, they first told me it was going to be, I wasn't going to be able to get it until September. This was still March. It's quite a long time when someone's telling you at 40 years old that you have Parkinson's. So I cried. I don't think that's what got me an appointment. I think that they eventually found a place in the schedule where they can fit me in, that I got in. But it's incredibly difficult to get in to neurologists and to movement disorder specialists. There is such a backup in the US. I think it's probably even worse than Canada. But it takes months and months to get in.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier, but I don't think, you know, when you talk to people about Parkinson's and you know, who are the people that care for them, and the neurologist and their movement disorder specialists. And we know that those people see people with MS and ALS and all of these different things. And it's like, how can there be so few? But there really are. It's not something that, like, you know, we hear from people all day, all the time, that they don't have a movement disorder specialist or a neurologist even who's super aware of Parkinson's and all the little itty bitty details within like a 5-6 hour drive. And it's unfortunate, but there's just not enough.
Right. I'm really lucky being where I am, being so close to a movement disorder specialist. But with someone with YOPD or young onset, they definitely should. I'd recommend seeing a movement disorder specialist. And I mean, neurologists are great on their own, but having that specialization, I think, is really beneficial.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what you think the difference is and why somebody with YOPD, it's so important?
And this is just my personal opinion. I can totally be off base on this, but I think that the extra education and extra specialization is really helpful because as young onset, we have a different set of, our issues aren't exactly 100% the same as someone with later onset. So with young onset, you're going to have issues with dystonia or cramping earlier, which that typically isn't going to affect someone with later onset until much later. Or dyskinesia is a major problem with young onset. So of how medication affects us. And that typically isn't going to be an issue with a later onset individual. And a lot of times I don't think that a general neurologist is going to be focusing on those discrete, distinct issues as much as a movement specialist who would be seeing the bulk of the patients would.
Right. So you originally told basically 6 months before you can get an appointment, but you eventually got one. How soon?
I ended up on May.
Okay.
May
So
6th.
2 months. Yeah.
Yeah, 2020, which is just, I feel bad. So my mom's birthday. It was also the day I defended my thesis
Oh.
for my PhD, which also, that was a rough day as well, because there was a shooting on campus at Wesleyan for the girls actually from Longmont, Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
It just.
You mean the actual day, not the
Yes.
anniversary day, that day?
Oh, no. The 6th, in 2009, when I was defending, there was a shooting on campus on that day.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's like it's my mom's birthday, but I feel bad. I'm sorry, Mom. But so I got in on that day and I failed every test miserably. So pretty much right away, I just failed everything. So the finger tests, I failed the hand tests, the drawing, the spirals, everything. I was just didn't pretty much pass anything. And so then I had genetic screening that day too, and I do not have any of the mono genes. So the single genes associated with it. And then I was eventually scheduled for a DAT scan, which I had to follow up on multiple times to get that to go through, to make sure that that was going through, to see what the status of the dopamine transporter was in my brain, to make sure.
Oh my goodness. So what was it like to leave that office? Were you by yourself?
Oh no, my husband was with me, thank God. It was very stressful, very emotional. I think I probably started crying at some point in time during the visit, just because I was just overwhelmed with everything. I think I even asked them, when can I get DBS?
So you had like kind of really dove into all of the Parkinson's.
It just kind of not really even, it just ends up as part of when I teach, it just ends up part of it. So
Yeah.
I knew enough where I could ask these ridiculous questions when I was diagnosed.
What was their response when you said, when can I get DBS?
I think it was like, we'll just wait a little bit on that.
Uh-huh. So did they prescribe you something right away? What was that? What happened?
No, we had to wait until my DAT scan. So here we are in May. I'm getting my diagnosis. The DAT scan wasn't until July. So it took that long to get the DAT scan because I had to order the tracer. I had to get approved, had to get scheduled. A lot went into getting that planned and set and ready to go.
Were they, I know that, not everybody gets a DAT scan. So was this something that you had to bring up and push for, or were they like, no, this is sort of common practice with our practice, everybody gets it?
I don't know if it's common practice with the practice, but I had, at that point in time, I was seeing a resident at that time. He was doing his residency there. And so he was younger and newer. Maybe not. He was newer to the field. So I think that it was more common practice to folks who are newer to the field. So I don't know if everyone else who goes through the clinic gets a DAT scan.
Okay. So how long till you find out some answers from that?
So that was pretty quick. It posts to my portal quicker, but then the appointment, we had to wait till the appointment, which was like 2 or 3 weeks later, to discuss it and where to go from there.
Okay. So based on those results, the clinical exam, what was your first sort of line of action?
We started with Nupro. So Nupro, for folks who don't know, is a patch that is a dopamine agonist. And for some reason, a lot of folks like to start you on a dopamine agonist first. And The patch seems great because you tend to avoid any peaks and troughs. Everything just stays level. But the problem is I was terribly allergic to the adhesive.
Oh.
Extremely allergic. I was getting welts on my legs. So it was really hard. So sometimes it didn't stick. Sometimes it stuck too well. If it stuck too well, I'd get welts. So then we changed from that to, I think, ropinirole.
Mm-hmm.
And then we added in carbidopa levodopa. And now I've kind of shifted to just carbidopa levodopa, extended release and immediate release. I wanted off the agonists. When I felt like I was gaining too much weight because with agonists can come impulsive disorders. So, and I felt like I was shopping a little too much, even though I was just buying stuff that was on sale. I was very cognizant of buying stuff on sale, but I just felt like I was buying too much stuff.
Mm-hmm. And when you went off of it, did that just go away?
Yes. So
Isn't it crazy?
It's really insane. So I started losing weight without even just trying, and I stopped buying random stuff. Now, every time a package comes, I actually know what it is.
Right. Yeah, I think it's crazy that people and actually this is more important. Did your doctor tell you about those potential side effects? Like, hey, this is a lot of things like this happen, or was this like you had to discover it and then go back to them?
I think that he mentioned it. He might have mentioned to look out for stuff, but I think that I really remember most from listening to Larry Gifford's podcast. An episode, I think the episode with Vicki Dillon.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
On the agonist.
Yeah.
So that's very useful.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It is. And it is so crazy. People just say I went off of it and that just completely goes away.
Yeah.
So you hope that you can go off of it if that is one of your side effects and that something else can work for you. So how did you feel like there was a sort of a big transition when you had to switch meds, and did you always have sort of coverage? Or
I was really, really lucky. I switched from ropinirole over to the extended release carbidopa levodopa, and it seemed to work just switching over really, really well. So I kind of tapered down from one dose and then just cut it out totally after like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was actually fine.
Mm-hmm. And what would you, back then, what was your dosage, and have you changed much since then? What's the difference?
Yes. So I started, I think, probably only with like 2 milligrams of extended release ropinirole. And now I am taking, I need to cut down a little bit on my dosage, but that's going to happen after the semester is over. So I take 1 carbidopa levodopa 5 times a day, the extended release 4 times a day, and on Gentis at night.
Okay.
So
do you feel pretty well controlled?
Most of the time, yes. So I was off a little bit before this, and who knows why, but I have the Ambrosia inhaler now, which it's really great for me. If that works for you, that's awesome. There's also the strips. To me, I have issues with tasting stuff. Like if it tastes really bad, it just makes me very sick. So I just couldn't do the strips. So this is what works for me. So I really just encourage everyone who's out there to make sure that you have these open conversations with your doctors to make sure that you're taking what's right for you.
Yeah. I mean, and when you take the inhaler, is it pretty instantaneous or how long?
Yes, it takes about less than 10 minutes to kind of kick in partially, and then fully it takes like 20.
Okay. Great. And what are when you're off, what are some of the most like disruptive symptoms that you experience?
So for me, I no longer have a tremor, even though it started off with a tremor in my finger. But I no longer have a tremor. So except for I have more of an action tremor. So if I'm doing something, I might get a tremor. But I more so have gait issues. So when I'm off, I go from being fine to the Tin Man right away. So I shuffle. I lose a lot of facial expressions. It's not like I have that much as it is, but I lose a lot of that. Um, so it's pretty it's a pretty wild swing, from being on and off. It's like a light switch. Someone turns it on and then you're on, and then someone turns off and you're off. So
Yeah. So what changed once you got your diagnosis? I would say like mentally, what changed, and then what changed once you had that diagnosis and you found a good medication plan?
so the first 6 months were pretty tough. It was just not a good time in general. So that past year was pretty rough. In my family, it was pretty rough. So I had my hip surgery. Then on Christmas Eve, my dad actually passed away.
Oh,
That was absolutely unexpected. And then
oh,
my diagnosis. Then my brother-in-law was diagnosed with brain cancer. He's fine.
wow.
He's like he's like Superman. So we had if someone just told you everything that happened in our family, it would be like, is that really real? It was pretty ridiculous. But I think that so for 6 months, I pretty much I kept it really quiet. I didn't want to talk about it. It was hard to talk about with new people because you feel like you're consoling them a lot of the time. So I wasn't sure about what I was doing. And then about 6 months in, I thought to myself, I'm a scientist. So this is what I do. I can't just sit there and not do anything. I have to advocate in some way. And so then I just totally started switching around everything that I worked on and switched to looking up women's issues and YOPD, and just kind of got into advocating as much as I could that way.
Wow. Yeah. So, where, part of what you were discovering was when you were working out, my body's not behaving like it
Mhm.
should. At what did you ever stop exercising, and where are you now with it?
So I stopped for about the time for my hip surgery. So when I went for my hip surgery and for the PT after, they were telling me that I should be careful with what I do because my hip could pop out of place, that I couldn't do X, Y, and Z for a bit. And so I took that to heart. So I didn't really do much for a few months. Um, and then I realized that, okay, this is silly. I need to do more. So I started to build a gym in my basement. So now I have a treadmill, I have a bike, I have a barbell, a squat rack, and some bumper plates. So, but a really short ceiling or really low ceiling. So there's not much overhead happening there unless you're sitting down. Then you can do overhead press. So I do some strict body like bodybuilding lifting with friends. Doing CrossFit moves and like doing like something like clean. For some reason, my brain doesn't work fully right with understanding how to do the full movement. So I can do it with an empty barbell, but I just don't think that I can clean anywhere near the same amount that I used to be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So I still try to stay active. And for some reason, I actually like running more than I ever did. So, which
Yeah.
is
And how's your foot when you're running? I mean, when you're controlled, you're pretty great. Like
yeah,
no problems with that.
yeah. So if anything, if I feel like I'm gonna be twisting in, I tape my foot up first with K
Oh,
tape.
uh-huh.
So I'll just pull from under and around, and that's typically enough to stabilize it.
Oh, that's great. That's
So
great. And do you notice the difference being able to get back to doing some weights and cardio and stuff?
it just feels much better being able to do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I'm sure. Um, okay, so at the time that you got your diagnosis, you were a full-time professional, right?
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about your work and what you were doing, and has any of that changed and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I am a biology professor. So I teach at a small private college in upstate New York. My focus is mostly on molecular stuff. So I teach cell biology right now, which is the makings of the cell. And in the spring, I teach a really awesome class called Seminar in Biology, which really does help me keep up to date with the happenings in the Parkinson's world with the literature. So I was doing research. My research project used to focus on understanding how cells migrated to form the yolk sac in early embryos, which can only be studied using stem cells. So I would use stem cells to make these little things called embryo bodies, which are reminiscent of an early embryo, so we can understand how the cells migrate. You need your yolk sac to support life until the umbilical cord hooks up, and in people that doesn't happen until 5 weeks. So I was interested in understanding how the cells got to where they were going. So that's what I was studying in before times. And then now with Parkinson's, I've kind of switched around to trying to understand women's issues in Parkinson's. So my research group has gone through the literature for young onset and have characterized what they found for the first 100 papers, and that only 25% mention women and only 4% mention menstruation, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. So what? Well, let's talk about that. So what are you learning? Let's talk about why. First of all, women versus men with Parkinson's, and then women YOPD women.
Right.
What are some of the big issues that you're finding that you need to obviously advocate for and work on?
Well, I think that our face of Parkinson's isn't really correct. So when you Google Parkinson's, you'll see a little old man, a little old white man who is stooped over and he's hunched over. I don't think that leaves out a lot of people. Okay. So I don't really think that's who the face of Parkinson's really is. And I'm not even sure if we know who it really is anymore. So I think that women are underrepresented. First of all, I think the other races are really underrepresented as well. So I think that there's a lot that we're leaving out when we look at Parkinson's. And I think that the issue is, how do we get to these populations to survey them, to see where everyone fits in? So a lot of times women will take care of themselves last, so they'll be underrepresented. So other communities aren't. So the African American community isn't there. There's more distrust towards the medical field. So getting everyone to the table is going to be very difficult. And I think that some issues when it comes to treatment and therapies is that when we only study things in men, we don't know how hormones impact medications. So the impact of hormones and menstruation on your medications is really unknown, right? So a lot of women will say that their medications don't work around the time of menstruation. And we just don't understand how that's interacting. It clearly is interacting, but it's not as acknowledged as it should be. We don't know how. So like carbidopa, levodopa, everyone's pretty much given the same doses, right? So 1 pill, a half a pill, 1.5, whatever. It's all the same amount. But how is someone with more fat or less fat, or a female who carries fat differently, how are they processing it compared to a male? So the pharmacokinetics of how differences in males and females is just really not known. So there's big gaps in what we know and what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. It seems like, we hear a lot about people when, they're menstruating and they say like, my symptoms are so much worse. Is that normal? Right. They want to know, like, is this my Parkinson's, getting worse, or is this
Right.
just what happens? Right. Anecdotally, you're in a lot of working groups and panels with other women, other YOPD women. What are they talking about? What is their experience?
Seems to be very similar to pretty much what everyone notices is it's either your medication is not effective or your symptoms are worse. So who knows which one it actually is? But it does seem to have an impact on whether or not you're functioning to your fullest during that time of the month, which is just terrible. And most women, it seems to be 2 days before the onset of menstruation and 2 days, the first 2 days during. It seems to be that 4-day span that seems to be the worst. And it's just that's 4 whole days a month that you're pretty much can't function very well. And we've just totally, there's no studies on it. There's nobody looking at that.
Right. What have you done? I mean, are you at the place where you're still like, do you have that issue, and are you using your medication in different ways?
So I have like a half a dose I play with. So during most of the time for me, so everything always happens on the weekend for me. So it tends to
like the universe knows you're a teacher.
Yes. So it just makes sure my weekend is as exciting as it can be or not exciting as it can be. So I tend to just suck it up and just not do anything, unfortunately, and just stay in bed or stay on the couch. But I do have a half a dose of pill that I play around with every so often, which I also use if I have issues at night too.
What about exercise during that time? Do you does it make it feel better, or is it just too tiring?
No, I still do it though. It doesn't seem to affect anything. It just you just feel tired and everything feels difficult. I might switch what I'm doing. I might try to do more yoga instead of doing something really cardio based, because it feels like running could sometimes be dangerous if my meds aren't working right.
Right.
Or even biking could be dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, what are some of the things that you are doing, to advocate for this? Like specifically, when you think about women that are in your situation, what is there to do? How to influence what research is happening? How to influence how doctors are taking care of people, women?
I think that the most important things to do is to make sure that you take part in research. So I am part of a series of surveys that are coming out through the Fox Foundation, through PD Avengers, that are investigating these issues with women and Parkinson's. So it's going to be the most comprehensive deep dive into a lot of these issues. So, and within the next few days, there's probably going to be our second survey coming out on that deals with pre-menopause, menopause, and post-menopause. The first survey was about general health and family life, just to get a bit better picture of what's going on so that we can say to researchers, hey, we have all this preliminary data. Let's look in this more.
Yeah. So for people who are interested in being able to, maybe take part in the survey or do that, where do they go for information?
So if you go to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, it's going to be under Fox Insight. So you can sign up to do a lot of other studies under survey studies under Fox Insight. So the first one about female health and home life is still up there. So I'd encourage anyone who hasn't taken that to make sure they take that. And within the next few days, the second one should be coming out.
Okay, let me grab it and see if I can throw some in the. Let me see if I can see it. Let's see.
They're not as easy to find as you'd like to be.
Right? I mean, it never is. I'm going to see if I see anything. If not, you said it's part of Fox Insight?
Yeah, it's under Fox Insight.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw that one up there and hope that And then I'll dive in deeper and get a better link when the new stuff comes out. Yeah.
So, and also through the World Parkinson's Coalition working group for young onset women that I'm on with Polly. Polly's our head of it. We're coming up with a booklet for young onset women on everything that we wanted to know at diagnosis. That I'm really excited for. That's going to be released at WPC in the summer.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. In Barcelona. Awesome.
I hope that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah. Right. I mean, first you have YOPD. That's really a different disease than later onset. And then you have the women's issue is different as well. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll definitely share that when it gets released. So what would you say, first of all, I know like when you're on the Living with Parkinson's meetup, you talk about your students a lot. What role do your students play in not just your professional life, but in, living well with Parkinson's?
I think so. I will acknowledge at first I'm incredibly lucky to be in the position that I am and to be as open with everything as I am. I see my students playing an incredible role in the future of the disease. So I had just signed up about, I think, 30 graduate students in PT and OT to become LSBT Big certified. So that's another 30 students who at graduation will be certified for LSBT Big to be able to do therapies specific for patients with Parkinson's in this area. Where if you go to the LSBT site, there is no one in private practice in this area right now. So that's 30 students who are going to be going out in the world. That is amazing.
That is amazing.
So anytime that anyone asks me to go to a class to talk to them, I go to the class and I'll talk to them. So I've been going to OT now for a few semesters. So I talk to them. I let them ask me any questions they want about Parkinson's, and I will happily answer anything they want to know. For PT, last year, I went to a PT class to talk about my research with YOPD, and I didn't tell the students I had YOPD until like partway through the talk. So then I can tell them, to the PT students, I could tell them other things to look for. So with prodromal symptoms, I think my symptoms were really about my shoes. So if you look at my shoes, they told a story. So I have some ballet flats under my desk at work. Actually, next to my desk now, I have a standing desk. That are worn out in the toes on my left toes from cramping in my feet and scrunching my feet up. So the inside of my shoes, they tell a story, and my sneaker treads. So they're worn out more on the right side, even though my left side is affected because I favor the right side. So I'm going to wear out the right side more. So these are things that as a therapist, they can be looking for. If you have a patient who's complaining about things, look at these other things. Or your frozen shoulder, look at what those are in your patients. So I have the ability to go out and to tell the students what else to look for, and to, I think, help the general community. So I can't imagine not doing that.
Yeah, that's a really great gift, right, to the community. I was actually just working on I worked with CrossFit and doing a paper with them, but part of it was saying like, these are prodromal symptoms that you might see. You're not in the business of diagnosing anybody,
right?
But if you all of a sudden start seeing something like this, is pay attention, right? Like look at them, ask them questions, see if they're noticing it, and see what they're doing about it.
Right, and make sure you watch people walk. So after I had my hip surgery, working with a bunch of health scientists, my friend Karen, she was like, "You're not walking right. You're not walking right." And so I kept on going to my PT. I'm like,
Wait, so did you think you weren't walking right too? Or was this even earlier where she was like, something is not
after my hip surgery? She's like, "You're not healing right. You're not walking right." So my colleague is telling me, "You're not right." And then I go to my PT. I'm like, she's saying I'm not right. And no one spent the time to watch me do anything as much as they should have because it was too busy. So I tell all the students in practice, when you're in practice, make sure you take the time to listen to your patients. That's the most important thing that you can do as a therapist. So
yeah, I mean, you think about like don't have the time or get busy, and you just like are already on this is what our protocol. We're going to do this,
right,
and you're just wasting time at that point, right? If
right,
you're treating the wrong thing.
right. So how long do I waste treating something? So getting how many injections of cortisone do I have in my hip that I didn't actually need because my hip flexor, it was never going to help it because it was
Right.
just tight from the Parkinson's. So I probably did need the surgery because my labrum was really bad and I did have pretty bad arthritis in the hip. But that amount of PT probably wasn't what I needed. And I
Right.
probably needed something different. So I think that's a really awesome gift I have. I also go to our psychology classes and I talk to them about how to talk to people with chronic illness. So it's not the best to say, well, I hope that you feel better soon, or that's not very helpful. So what can you say that's going to be helpful to someone with chronic illness? So I talked to them about that.
What are some ideas that you have? What is a good thing for someone to say?
So how can I help you? What can I do to support you? What do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do? I think those are better questions to ask, or what, even inquiring about what your symptoms are like or more about your actual disease. I think that that's better than saying, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope that you get better soon. Stuff like that is not really helpful. It's
Yeah, and I
really
think also, they don't mean anything by it. They have nothing but good things. They're just trying to do what's right. But
right,
that statement also is reflects a misunderstanding of Parkinson's. Like, I'm not going to get better. Like, do you
right.
get it? Like,
Yeah.
this is not. There's no getting better from this. Like, I
This
might
is
feel
what it
better
is.
later today, but understand that. I know a lot of people will argue, like, "Oh my gosh, you look like you're doing great."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, yep, doing
Exactly.
great, so much better."
Because my meds are working. So
Right,
I might be able to like run all over the place, but come catch me in a few hours when my meds are done because it's night.
right,
It's a totally different story. And that just becomes exhausting sometimes trying to explain to everyone.
yeah,
Um, so I think that going to teach, how students about that, the shifts, like, so I may look right now, but my meds might not be working later. And so how it can change really quickly. Explaining to them how it works is really, really helpful. Um, and then my undergrads that I have in my bio seminar class, and I have in cell bio right now, there are future PTs and OTs. So I get to help train them early on. And so I get to involve them in lots of different things. So with the PD Avengers, last April, we did a sit to stand challenge. So I had all my classes do them with me. So I challenged them all and we all did them together. So next spring, I'll challenge them all and have them do it together with me. Just anything that I can involve them in, I like to try to involve them to show them what they can do.
yeah. I mean, you're creating people that will actually want to go into this field and specialize in people
Yeah,
with Parkinson's, right? And
right,
without you being there, what a gift.
right.
They may never have decided to go that way, right?
One of my students, her grandmother had Parkinson's or has Parkinson's, and she was just her grandmother was so happy and so excited that we were doing all this, for people with Parkinson's. That was just awesome to hear that, how it touches so many different people from so many different places.
Right.
So everyone can make a difference.
Yeah. So, what haven't gotten into your like how this impacted your family. and how you all, just decided, hey, this is the new world here. What are we going to do? Like, how did your husband deal with it? And how?
I think we're still navigating that. It's hard for him to see sometimes. During the day, he misses a big part of the day because I'm at work. So when I'm doing fine in the day, he misses a lot of that. And so sometimes he'll see when I fell in the summer and smashed my face on the bookcase in the middle of the night. So he'll see that. So he gets really incredibly worried. So we're still navigating how to deal with all that. So it's still kind of tricky. And with my mom still navigating that because she always wonders, like, is there something that I did, as a parent, with everything you hear on the TV, the Paraquat and Camp Lejeune, and today we're talking about baby food, so, and it's like, no, it's probably a combination of so many different factors that we don't even know about.
Yeah, that's one of the hard parts about it. If you don't know, if we can't pinpoint exactly why it starts, it's also really hard to fix it, right?
Right. Exactly. So I think it's you're constantly navigating these things that we don't know what's the best way to do it? What's the best way to go forward?
Yeah. Yeah. What happened when you, how soon did you tell your employer?
So I told my employer, I think, so pandemic, whenever the semester that we went back to classes, I can't remember when that is because everything just blurs. I told them when I went back to classes because I was teaching in this building that was, our campus is pretty small, and it happened to be like one of the furthest places from my office possible on a really small campus that had no hand railing going up to the second floor. Really old buildings, no hand railing. Like, I need a hand railing. I need something to hold on to going up the stairs. So do people probably without Parkinson's, but I for sure need that. So I made sure I filed my paperwork with I wanted accommodations if needed to make sure that classrooms have hand railings if they're on the second floor, that they're accessible. And now it's that I teach in either of two buildings that are really close to me. So
No, that's great. And how were they about it?
Fantastic. They are absolutely awesome. So my deans are really supportive. I've told all my deans, they're very supportive of everything I do. So I've stepped down from a lot of, before I was on a ton of committees, I was the co-chair of our gen ed. So we revamped our gen ed, and I was co-chair of that. I was chair of a committee called CAR, and then I stepped down from being chair of that. And then I just totally stepped down from the committee, was on admissions and retention and academics standards. So I've stepped down from a lot of different committees, and I've just become involved in stuff that I really want to be, that I can help make a difference with. So for all that, I joined a committee called Thrive, which the name pretty much says it all. So I can work on things with Parkinson's so we can learn how to thrive. So I can try to involve. Another thing I need to do when I get time is that for our Healthy Parkinson's community in Albany, so we're missing a few things. I would like to see how our campus can actually fill those gaps. And so how PT students and OT students and nursing students can help fill those gaps. I still need to work on that. But this is how I can do that.
Yeah.
By being involved in committees like this. So
that's great. And what about your friendships? Has anything changed, or, how did you, I know that you have a lot of, Parkinson's friends now,
yeah.
But how did you go out and meet people? Was that something that you were really conscious about? And what are your relationships like now?
So right now, when I moved to Albany, so I had to learn how to make friends as an adult. So the only way to make friends as an adult I found was at the CrossFit gym. So my best friend, Sarah, she's incredibly understanding of my ups and downs. So this weekend, I only wanted to go out to breakfast and then go home and just hang out and grade. She's really understanding if we have to skip lifting for a few days because I'm just not having it. Just isn't happening. She's really incredibly understanding of all that. So I'm really grateful for that. And as for the rest of all my Parkinson's friends, I just fell into I don't even know how I fell into everything. It's amazing. So,
well, it's good. It's quite a community.
so it's like you get a permanent neurodegenerative disease and you end up with like the best community ever. It's that I just asked the right questions at the right time and ended up in the right places. So I'm incredibly grateful. Like Kat, I just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
We just work so well together. I just absolutely adore her. I adore Ken. I just love them both to pieces. Like I just want to work with her on everything. Because we just work so well together and just Gainer, just everyone. It's just, I am incredibly grateful and incredibly lucky that, so I have this disease, but I end up with a whole bunch of awesome people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure people hear about?
So a lot of students I'm working with. So I'm working with a lot of OT graduate students who are now doing Parkinson's research. So the survey that student Emily came out with is, sorry, I can't stop coughing now. Young-onset survey that she came up with. I'm really happy that it's shared on the website. So I'm really proud of being able to.
I should throw that up. Yes?
Yes, please.
Let me grab it.
So it's questions on look at cognition in folks with young onset. And a lot of the questions we had gone through and before she released the survey. So a lot of them are questions that you can find in other places, but we've changed them to have that YOPD twist.
Great. Let me see. Okay, here we go. I found it.
So I'm really lucky that I can get that a lot of faculty friends will support me too, and just be part of a lot of research projects that I come up with.
Yeah, right. I mean, you've gotten to kind of switch your whole focus, and now everything you're doing obviously is benefiting a ton of students in the community, but also you get to benefit from it too with having more people behind you.
It's just so awesome to see that, like Emily's survey, when she gets the data and that she plans to make resources for folks. I mean, that's just amazing.
Right.
Everyone wants to be on board and wants to help, which is just fantastic.
That's
how we make change.
Absolutely.
So.
Good. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. You're welcome back whenever you want. Love to hear more about the work that you're doing, especially as we, gear up for World Parkinson's Congress.
Oh, I would love to talk more about research sometime. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And we'll get Gainer on. We'll get Gainer and we'll get Kat. We can all be on together. And
we have to talk about everything awesome that we're working on. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Good. Well, thank you so much, Kristi. And we will see you in January 19th for the Living with Parkinson's meetup. And we'll see you online as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, Kristi.
Have a good one.